Hello, this is Don,
And this is Gina with Focused Healthy Family.
and this week we're sharing with you some of the best of 2023 from the Focused Healthy Family podcast.
Each day this week, we'll rebroadcast one of our favorite episodes over this past year. So be sure to tune in every day.
And also join us in 2024.
So have a happy holidays, and we'll see you in the new year.
So I went to St. Louis, which is my hometown. This is before we were married. It was 1993. Yeah. And so for some reason, I went by myself. I'm trying to remember. I think it was a holiday, possibly.
Could have been.
Yeah. And when I was there, I wanted my mom and I decided to go down to Union Station, which is the huge main train station in St. Louis. Really nice, neat place, and they had converted a lot of it over to kind of a shopping mall. I'm not even sure if the train still came in there at the time. And while we were there, I wanted to get something for Gina. Just wanted to. And what I was able to come up with, I found this. Grover, he was in one of the shops there. Yes. And I know we had talked a lot about Grover. In fact, you gave me the book, Grover Sleeps Over. I don't know if you remember that or not, but that's what we did. So
Somehow we had a connection with Grover.
yeah.
And you talking like Grover, and that's how you story.
So I was in the shop. It was one of these kind of fancy kind of shops, I guess. I don't know. And they had all different kinds of stuffed animals and different gifts and stuff like that. And so I really thought this was cool and have loved it since we've gotten it. But I brought it up to the checkout counter and put it on the counter, and I was paying for it. And the lady was putting Grover into a bag. And as she was putting in, I started to talk. I started going, no, I do not want to go into bag. I can't breathe it. No, oh no, I can't breathe in here. And the lady at the desk was like, was looking at me like, what's going on? And then she started to kind of laugh about it because I kept going, and as I walked out of the store, I'm going, I can't breathe in here. Please let me out of this bag. Who put me in this silly bag? So anyway, that was where Grover came about. I'll let you have him now because we have used poor Grover for a lot of things.
Came a beloved family.
That's right. I love this family.
So
they're not blue, but they should be.
Years later, Harrison came along, our first child, and my parents were living on Lake Murray, about 2 hours from where we live. And I would take trips down there and take him with me, and it would be the two of us in the car. And gosh, he was a toddler, kind of somewhere in the ages of 2 to 4. And to keep him entertained, we'd have Grover. And while I'm driving, I would do things like having Grover talk to him in the back seat. I can't even remember the kinds of things that I would say, but it kept him entertained and for the 2-hour car ride. And so
well, I remember sitting on my shoulder and like leaning up. I'm trying to remember something like that. It wasn't the easiest thing to do and drive at the same time. And then like I'd be speaking as Grover, and of course Harrison always got such chuckles out of that.
I think I used to do kind of like a, peekaboo kind of thing. It was easy to amuse our first child.
Oh yeah, because I always had the hat trick. I had this hat, big, like, I don't know, almost like a Texas kind of hat. And I'd leave it
Indiana Jones hat.
Yeah, I'd leave it on top of my head, but I'd leave it real loosely. And all I had to do was kind of tilt back a little bit and the headrest would knock it off. And he would just chuckle away with it. So hello, this is Don.
And this is Gina.
And we're with Focused Healthy Family. Today, this is podcast number 66. and we are talking about juggling. Sandwich generation jugglers, as we're going to call it. But before we do, let's take a moment for our sponsor. Hey guys, it's Don here from Focused Healthy Family. And instead of our sponsor today, I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the workshop we're doing based on this book. And we talk a lot about the book. We've talked about it in our podcast, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk by Adele Faber and Elaine Majlis. And what we were so impressed with this that we decided to do the training the training for it and begin doing workshops on it. We've been doing them now over the last couple of years and have just been amazed by the changes that we have seen happen to parents who are dealing with kids and watching it changing how they communicate with their child, but also how it changes behavior and it changes anxiety. It brings anxiety down in the house. And like I said, I've had an added bonus to it is I use the same material, the same stuff that's in here for my adult world with my profession, because the concepts in this book, they give you real practical steps you can take to change how you communicate and make a difference between having a 15-minute conversation or a 1-hour battle. They tell you in here how to do that in many different ways. And so we do workshops. Uh, it's a 6-week workshop. It's a 2-hour a day workshop. But what we did is we split it into 2 days, 1 hour each day. We do it at noon Eastern time. And we have had people all over the world that have come onto the class, and really neat stuff. And I'm going to play for you uh, one of the parents' testimonies on what they thought of the class. So listen and see what they said. So, starting January 9th, 2024, we're doing our next series of 6-week classes, and they're at noon on Tuesdays and Thursdays, each week for 6 weeks. And you're going to gain a lot of different skills that are very important. Plus, you'll have the opportunity to have other parents and listen to how they deal with things and what's going on for them, and literally working through examples, role playing, um, learning some good content to the book, and just having a good time too at the same time. We have a lot of fun while we do them. I hope that you can join us for this workshop. Again, it's all virtual via Zoom, and it's 6 weeks starting January 9th. You can find out more information by going to focusedhealthyfamily.com/workshops, where you're going to find out all about this wonderful workshop on how to talk so kids will listen and listen so kids will talk. Hope you join us again. focusedhealthyfamily.com/workshops. Thanks. Yes.
Talking about Grover and sandwich generation juggling.
Yeah, you know how we juggle so many things in our life as it is.
And ironically, before we even had kids,
Yes.
I made Don.
I don't know if
It
you
was when
can
you had
see it.
started your business. I called it the Jugglers Award. And
Let me read it. Or, well,
this was done with,
before kids.
yeah, I said that.
Oh,
What do you call that
a
thing?
burner, like
Yes.
a engrave, like
There's a
not
term.
engraver, but
There's
a
a term
wood.
for
It
it.
was a wood burning tool.
Kit. And so I had a stencil to do. And I copied this clown with these balls, which now kind of look like little hamburger sandwiches to me.
Pokemon balls, is it?
And it's faded. So this dated October 5th, 1996. There's a date on the back, and that's would have been your birthday I gave to you. And I had put things on here like son and uncle, manager, partner, spouse. And then years later, I added father, and some other words were added in 2002.
Let's see. I can read them. That partner, motivator, husband, friend, business owner, lover, manager, uncle, son, brother, salesman, listener, homemaker, and father. And then on the bottom, very bottom, it says, for all the roles you juggle.
So just kind of interesting that I made this at the beginning of our marriage. And here we are years later, juggling so much more.
Yeah, little did we know how much.
We could even imagine.
So we've taken these roles on pretty seriously.
So we've talked a bit about the sandwich generation and what that means. And it's a matter of caring for aging parents along with your children, either children under the age of 18 or adult children that you are supporting in some way, either financially, emotionally, or both, as we are with our 21-year-old and having the 14-year-old at home. And how that entails as far as time, the time demands, the emotional demands, financial demands. Some of us are supporting aging parents and children financially. We're fortunate to only need to financially support our children and not the aging parents. Yet sometimes the emotional demands can be as exhausting as financial.
Yeah.
And
we're going to want to look into, how you can do that. How can you better juggle those different stress factors, anxiety, and the physical part of it? How do you juggle time? And
if you can figure that out, please call us and let us know.
We're going to give some suggestions
because we're still figuring it out.
Maybe Grover can help. He'll just keep popping in.
Have some answers.
You will watch me say, I can do Grover's voice while I drink water. So I'm not a good ventriloquist. So little humor there. But what we're going through right now.
My dad's had a second trip to the hospital this year.
And so it's demanding a lot on both of our times, really.
Yeah. And my dad has dementia with his Parkinson's. And so his understanding of why he's at the hospital and what's happened. And when he calls out for my mom and she's not there 24/7, and him understanding what's going on, it adds to the challenges. He has enough awareness and understanding, yet still has.
Well, it has a lot, there's communication, how to communicate with him or the aging parent who's having the dementia, the problems, communicating with the spouse or the caregiver, that's with them. Also, the caregivers in the location where it might be, with like a rehab or a hospital.
Yeah. Even helping them, especially the aides and techs, even sometimes the full nursing staff, that he has Parkinson's, and how you give him directions matters, and telling him to take big steps, and turning. The biggest thing is,
put your arm here,
turning. And it's so funny because the insurance looks at, how far can the person walk? Well, that means that they only qualify for this, but anyone can walk in a straight line for 200 feet. That's not the problem. The problem is turning and backing up to sit on the bed, using your walker appropriately to do so. That's when falls happen. Transitional movements, reaching movements, not just going in a straight line. There's so much more balance involved in having to turn in position, and giving him the cues he needs, whether it's visually pointing or tapping, touching this, we're going this way. Sometimes with Parkinson's, breaking it down too much is more challenging. Like sit on the side of the bed sometimes is easier for them to follow than, turn and step.
Well, yeah, take him one direction at a time,
Well, but sometimes the functional thing makes processes more quickly in the brain, but depending on the type of dementia, that can vary. And having that understanding of how to do that, and sometimes it's just letting them know what's going on. I see this all the time, unfortunately. I work in a great facility that's a skilled nursing facility where we have short-term rehab and long-term care. and they come in to help someone move in bed, and they don't always tell them what they're doing.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
now I'm going to have you roll so that I can change you, or I'm going to lower the head of your bed so that it's easier to scoot you up. And just saying those little things as far as what you're doing, no matter what the understanding is of that person there, it helps so much than just jumping in and doing it. And we get, the doing, jumping in and just getting things done is at the cost of their emotional well-being, that they know what's happening to them. And so, kind of backing up a little bit.
Okay. Far, near, over here, over there. Did you like that? Thank you.
A little humor is needed in this time.
Yeah, big time.
When, even a parent who doesn't have dementia, but maybe they're physically struggling, that their physical health is affecting their function. When you have the combination of physical and their mental health, it adds a whole nother layer of factors.
Well, and talking about helping the CNA or even the nurse and communication and all of that, the big problem too is that there could be multiple things going on for that person, and every person could have different multiples of things happen. So what your dad's going through versus what this other person's going through, even though they both have maybe Parkinson's, your dad has some back issues, and of course now the dementia. This person could have that, plus he could have ADD or what, who knows.
Right.
And so I think it would behoove the caregiver person, the spouse, the family, whatever, one, to learn about these different things themselves. Oh,
I apologize. That means my daughter has her therapy session online right now. So while you talk, I'm
going to let her know that
via Discord.
So, not to put the burden on the family necessarily, but to know that it might be important for you to let that CNA, that nurse, that even the doctor, if they know the different things that your parent is going through, your aging parent is going through, so that they can understand better, because they can't go into one Parkinson patient and necessarily act or say the same things as they could to the person down the hall that has Parkinson's but has other things along. Does that make sense?
Yeah, every person is an individual. And back to the idea of juggling. So here we are doing a podcast. I'm communicating with my 14-year-old who's just upstairs via my phone, because Discord is where she's at all the time, to remind her of things. And was on the phone this morning. My mom is at the hospital with my dad, and the doctor came in the room. So she put me on speakerphone so that I could be part of this conversation. And looking at all these layers. Yes, the past weekend I worked and then went from there to the hospital to be with my dad so my mom could go home and have some rest time. And, I'm on the phone or texting with our daughter 3 hours away and helping her. We helped her move this past weekend, and she's trying to find where things are at. And I did some unpacking while she had gone to work. And the juggling of all these different responsibilities and supporting people. And the key is finding time that you are refilling your cup, that you are getting the support that you need, because exhaustion and caregiver burnout is a very real thing.
So it goes into the idea about asking. And this is something I have to work with a lot of clients and patients with myself. I have in front of me majority of the time, probably 85 to 90% of the people that sit down in front of me are givers, as I call it, or pleasers, that are afraid, that have gotten to a point that they do not ask for what they need, because they've gone under this philosophy of it is better to give than receive. And so I have to work with them in changing that and train them in how to ask again. because as I talk about it, one of the things I talk about is that in being the pleaser, the giver, you train everybody around you not to give to you, not to support. And I don't mean Christmas gifts or birthday gifts. I'm talking about support,
Yeah, when
love,
people ask
attention,
for
all of
help,
that.
when you don't allow them to help,
Hmm.
when you don't ask for help, or when you turn down the help that they're giving, you're kind of putting that message out that you don't want their help, and they stop offering. And then you're in this position
When you really need it.
taking on too much, and you might not realize it in the moment.
And here, and this is a thought that I give to my clients and patients that I work with when they're thinking about having to ask somebody for support. And especially here when we're talking about this caregiver or parent that is taking care, a spouse that is taking care of their husband or wife or whatever. When it comes time to think about asking for help, think about this idea. As you've been a giver in your life, you know that when you give, it kind of gives you a warm feeling in the heart. It's a like a blessing that you give yourself because you've helped somebody. It feels good to help people. Well, in not allowing others to give to you, you rob them of that good blessing feeling, their opportunity to help somebody in the community, help somebody in their family. And I don't like saying that as that's not a judgment on you, but something to have in the back of your mind when you're ready to ask somebody for help is to think about this fact that I'm giving this person an opportunity to have a blessing, or a good feeling
So
anyway.
when you allow them to help, you are giving to them. You're
Mhm.
giving them that gift of being able to help somebody, and how uplifting that is. I know when we've been going through things, whether it's with our child and their mental health, or my dad and my son's girlfriend, or other people need my help, I'm like, please do reach out to me, because it helps me get out my own situation, to step into other areas.
Yeah, being, giving back to the community, and we've had a lot of support from our friends and community throughout different times in our life. When I had my heart attack, and well, we could go into another whole area, and I think we've talked about it before. When it's mental health issues, it's a little different, and that's one area that we need, I think, to change. And I think with the sandwich generation, it's the same thing too. We need to really, help people to understand that it's okay to ask, and it's because you need support. Because the other thing I tell the pleaser, giver, caregiver for that matter, is that at some point it becomes a burnout place. And as much as you want to care and give and help somebody, you may not be able to physically, emotionally, or just not even be here to caregive. So it's really important to think about asking for support, and finding ways that people can support you.
Yeah, knowing what it is that restores you, that recharges your batteries,
Mhm.
what things matter to you, what is restful to you. That can look different for different people. For some people, it might be taking a bath and reading a book, or for
Going to a
someone else,
movie or
yeah, getting out of the house,
yeah.
going out to eat. Or we were able to give that gift to my mother back in the winter when my dad was going through rehab, and I reached out to friends and neighbors as far as providing meals when they returned home. And it worked out that my brother had been in town, and right after everybody left, my mom had gone home, and her friend of many years, who she hadn't been in touch with recently, offered to bring her a meal. And then they wound up going out to eat together at Panera, and just it
Yeah,
was
I
a
helped to connect
connection
that.
for both of them, because
Yeah.
she had lost her husband, right? And so
Yeah.
the two of them having that connection. So finding ways to help people, even though, my mom was a little reluctant on this meal sign up service. That's the only thing that came out of it. And yet that was powerful, that one little thing did make a difference. And it didn't take that much time on my part to set that up and try to make some connections out there.
Well, and thinking about, because the other question that I've heard is what about those that are a long distance? those that aren't in the same town or same area, that may be 3 hours away, maybe 13 hours away by plane or whatever. And one of the things I recommend to that caregiver that is to think through all the things that somebody from a distance could possibly do for you. Even write them down. Can they call and make a telephone call to your aging parent and just talk with them for a half hour, an hour, so that the caregiver themselves can step away, at least, if not go somewhere, but at least step away, take that bath that you talked about, or or do something around the house that they haven't been able to do.
That brings up a story when our middle child was dealing with her anxieties and obsessive compulsive disorder and was so stuck as far as going places, and we needed to go somewhere or had an activity we wanted to attend. My brother would babysit via long distance.
Oh, yeah.
So she was around 10, 11. So it wasn't that she was that young being home by herself. She would be on, I think at the time it was Skype with her cousin,
Yeah.
600 miles away. And my brother would be there as well. And so she had this connection of someone else kind of being with her virtually and on the phone, and knowing that she could reach us or call us in a moment if she needed something and we needed to come home quickly. So finding ways outside the box to support.
I've always been there. They could have counted on me. I know I could have done it. I babysat before. Yes, I did. Oh, I'll go.
That brings up another fun story. So we recently lost our wonderful dog, Olive, 16 years and part of our family for over 13. And when our youngest was maybe 3 or 4, maybe somewhere in that age range, maybe, I don't know, old enough that we were out in the yard. We have a fenced in yard. She was on the swing. I needed to run and go to the bathroom. And I looked at Olive and I said, please watch her while I go inside. And she literally was facing our child the entire time. I came back out and she's watching her. And it just kind of made me smile. I had kind of that emotional connection with Olive. And, who knows how much they understand, but.
Well, so with the long distance thing, the other thoughts are, can they do research for you? Can they find out helping that person who's distant away understand better, but also they may be able to research doctors or treatment centers.
You can look things up online now, even though you're maybe local, they could be researching it and digging into information and finding other options.
Can they write notes? Can they write letters for that person? Can they offer financial support? So
my sister's great at sending food.
Yeah.
Sending a ham or different food that can show up at the door, which can be so helpful when you're juggling, going back and forth between a hospital or rehab center or whatever you're dealing with, to be able to come home and know you've got some food and not have to worry about preparing food for yourself.
So they can also give venting support for you, allowing you, the caregiver, to just talk it out and be maybe a good listener. So, think through what they could possibly do from a distance. Can they come there for a week? If they're 3 hours away, can they come for a weekend?
And one thing to keep in mind, and a good friend of mine did this with her father-in-law. So she lived locally, and her husband were there taking care of him while he was going through some issues. And their sister came up from a couple hours away, and they went and had time to themselves when they came up. And that is so important. You have a family member that lives out of town and they offer to come up to help with the parent. And you think, oh, it's a time for us all to spend time together, but that could be a time for you to take respite.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I struggle with, turning over the reins, letting someone else jump in and be like, okay, now I get my time. Now I'm going to go.
Well, I would think too, with that, when you have the couple that comes in for you and you're able to go do something with your wife, or don't necessarily clean the house, do something that is light and I mean, some people clean the house is a fun thing for them, I guess, but let the house, I guess that goes to a bigger point too, is don't worry so much about that the house has to be perfect, or you know, it can be messy. Nobody's gonna, if you're in the middle of this, you've got enough stress dealing with the person that you got to take care of and all the things you have to juggle with that, to have to worry about the house so much. you know Maybe this person that's long distance can hire a maid to come in, or hire somebody to come in and cut the grass for you.
Take care of those necessary daily things, and keeping in mind relationships in the long run. What's going to matter more? That the house was clean, that the laundry was put away, the grass was cut, or the relationship that you have with your child, with your partner, with your parent. Thinking about putting relationships first,
Yeah.
and the relationship with yourself. So for me, when there's a crisis, whether it's Don having a heart attack or my dad going in the hospital or child going in the hospital, I jump in and I'm just cool in a crisis, and I handle things and I do what I need to, and I ask for help, and I'm feeling okay with it. I tend to get kind of amped up, go mode. And so I went through that in January. And after my dad had spent time in the hospital and a rehab center, shortly after that, our youngest child was dealing with mental health stuff that really flared up, and she wound up in the hospital multiple times. And I'm jumping in, I'm juggling phone calls, I'm juggling both situations. And it doesn't hit me right away. But a month or so later, then I find myself feeling depleted, kind of after the fact, after dealing with everything, and when things are more settled. That happened 6 months after Don recovered from his heart attack. It was after the fact that I'm feeling exhausted, I'm tired. And for myself, with bipolar depression, having the ups and downs, that's when I tend to be on the downswing. And I don't always realize it at the time. And so looking back at it, what can I do differently?
This is up and this is down. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. And
Sorry.
what can I do? No, that was perfect. To juggle that better, to prevent that exhaustion that can come later.
Mhm.
I see that with older people. They cared for their spouse passes away, and then like 2 months later, they wind up in the hospital with an illness or something. They're depleted from all the time they put in caring for their loved one. And the toll that it takes on you is kind of a slow effect of pulling at you without realizing it. And in the moment you're taking care of things, and you have that adrenaline rush of kind of rising to the occasion and doing what you need to do. And in the end, have you taken care of yourself physically? Have you done some exercise? What's your diet been like when you're going back and forth to hospitals? What kind of food are you eating? Are you eating fast food? Are you eating snacks and bars? And are you getting fresh fruits and vegetables? And rest is a big one. Because you can't just like make up for sleep. If you're sleep deprived for a week, you can't just sleep in one Sunday.
A week for a week.
It has a slow cumulative effect on us and our system and how we're functioning. For me, I turn to caffeine, and I'm not a coffee drinker, so I'm drinking tea. And that has an effect on our system and our body and how it functions.
So a little note in there is that to try to do the best foods and all. But here's the other part of that. If you do eat the wrong stuff or whatever, however you want to look at it, is don't beat yourself up about it, because stressing over it isn't helping your health either. So
sometimes in the moment,
do your best.
You need food, you need something. Yeah. I remember when you were in the hospital after your heart attack, we had discovered our second child had gluten issues, and we had gone off gluten, and we ate a lot of peanut butter crackers from the vending machine at the hospital.
Yeah.
And in that moment, it was like, okay, we need food more than we need to worry about this right now in this moment. And planning ahead Now I'm great at packing a bag and grabbing snacks, and someone needs to go in the hospital and I grab my backpack and I've got my charging cords and my laptop. And so I'm ready to be able to operate if need be and to have those things with me at the time.
Well, those crackers were kind of also an incentive for her at that time too, because she was having a hard time, a little bit of a hard time with me being in the hospital, of understanding, I think, and so the if I remember right, it was a big thing for her to go to the hospital because she could get the crackers.
That was their youngest.
Yeah.
Our
Oh,
youngest associated your trip to the hospital with peanut butter crackers.
oh, I misunderstood what you were saying then.
Okay.
But anyway, that but crackers. We're all crackers. No.
But having, when you're
Did I
having,
say crackers?
and when kids are having to go places like this, I know when my dad was in the hospital back in the winter and my youngest needed to come with me, she brought things to do. And there was a lobby area around the corner from where his room was, where she was able to sit and work on her things. She had her laptop. She could even connect with her friends, and finding ways to. And then, like, we had a nice car ride together and we had time together and we stopped to get something to eat together. So taking that time to connect with my child.
Yeah, stay
while
connected, yeah.
Giving care to my parents. And that's quite a juggling act. And that's where you can get lost in the middle of doing all of that. You've got a child that you're caring for, and a lot of people, my generation, have much younger kids even, and people juggling aging parents as we have children at later ages and people are living longer. You might be 35 or 40 and have elderly parents and also have
Young kids, yeah.
who cannot be left alone and need your attention. And how do you make all that work? We often don't have family who lives close anymore, as we have spread ourselves around the world and family doesn't live nearby. Do we have other connections, friends, be it church or other support groups or things that we're part of? Have we made those connections, and do we have those people in our life to step in and help us?
Well, that's I think you and I were talking before we did this about the multi-generational home, where in the past, for many years in the past, probably I almost say from the beginning of time, but grandparents, parents, kids, sometimes relatives, aunts or uncles, could all live under the same household. And it was stressful, I would imagine, but it was also very supportive, because then they had people that could do things right there and then, that could watch, that could feed, that could do all the things.
Yeah, my grandfather was drafted for World War II and they lived with their grandparents in an apartment building in New York City. So my mother was a baby at the time and grew up with her grandparents right there in an apartment with them. And when you have those multi-generations, they can take care of different people. And some cultures are much better at embracing that and having that support, because then grandparents are taking care of grandchildren and there's still that emotional connection.
Well, what I talk about it, I'm actually looking at doing a TED talk on that idea, and kind of a new age kind of multi-generational home, because what I saw kind of happen in researching it is that, about the late 50s, early 60s, we kind of became the me generation, or it was people, the kids moved out, they moved away. I just read something about the Dwight Eisenhower building the road system and how it changed everything, and it allowed people to travel and move to different places and move away from parents. And so now what I'm kind of working on developing is this idea of a new age kind of multi-generational home, where it has a lot of digital stuff to it, where you've got Zoom very involved in that family, so that people that are at a distance can be part of the family, part of that household through a digital means, where you might have somebody that moves back to the house. There might be other members of the family that can't, but that can be there in a more digital way to be able to support in a lot of different ways. So I think our economy is kind of forcing this idea back to us, that, that we can't always afford to, the kids can't always afford to live away. So we're kind of coming back to this idea of the possibility of having multiple generations in a household.
And obviously the pandemic has added to that since
Yeah.
2020, and this whole Zoom culture that's just blossomed. And I love it. I have got some friends, and some of them weekly get together with siblings on Zoom calls, or we've done it around the holidays. And it's so important to establish that as a routine connection before you have the crisis. Because if you have things like that in place where you talk to your sibling once a week, or you have a Zoom chat or a call, and you have that in place, then it can really be helpful in times of crisis, and in times when you have the added stress of someone being in the hospital, someone getting hurt or injured, a death, whatever it is, and being able to get that support that you need. Dealing with my father, I am fortunate that my mother is in excellent health, and yet I see the toll it's taking on her, and being able to help her, being the caregiver for my dad, being the primary caregiver, and giving her the support that she needs. Sometimes that's even greater than what my father needs. And, how do I juggle all that? And what things do I do for myself? And there are some things I have done for myself over the years. Last year, I joined, it's a Restart program. It's a health program where you're looking at what you eat and basically doing a gut cleanse, a sugar detoxification program for a set number of weeks, and then slowly reintroducing foods. And over time, I lost some weight, but more importantly, it recharged. I remember at one point, I was not craving my tea in the morning, and I realized, I'm drinking this for the caffeine, and I have so much energy, I don't feel I need this. And finding how interesting that was by changing my eating habits, and then I was able to go and eat other things once in a while. But by doing that cleansing, it gave me that burst. And then I became part of this group of women, and that we meet almost weekly. And having that support, and having a coach kind of overseeing us and giving us different resources and things to participate in, how essential that is. And knowing that if I'm not checking in with them, that they're going to reach out to me and find out how I'm doing. Having that support in place has been very important to keep me going. And it's easy. For me, it's easy when everything kind of settles down, is I'm just out of exhaustion. I just disappear watching TV shows, playing a game on the phone. It's just as an unwinding, but it's sort of an escape. And currently we're in a bit of an overwhelmed state. We're looking at financial things we've got to take care of. And once again, my father being in the hospital, needing to go to rehab, and knowing outside of his routine of home, how challenging it is for him, how he doesn't understand. He can't just go home.
And then we're dealing with our daughter in Raleigh that's still trying to kind of settle into a life there, and
just move
financially too,
and
and
it's
and then
living is so high right now, where we're, I'm talking with my kids about what they pay to rent a place and what their income is. And when I graduated college in 1992, my first job earned me $35,000 a year, which was about $17 an hour. And I believe my apartment rent was $500 or maybe $550. So now I've got a kid making about that same amount of money, and yet can't find anything under $1,100 to rent. And, everything costs a whole lot more money now than it did then. And it puts an extra challenge on everybody. And this is why many grown children are moving back home or still living at home, because it's hard to afford to be on your own.
Yeah.
And so you have these different struggles. And for many people, their aging parents have not put the money away to have the money that they need to pay for their care. And so you can find yourself in the middle of having that responsibility as well.
Well, that it also kind of comes to this other idea of, I talk about long distance as far as somebody moving away, being miles away, but could also be long distance of mind, where you aren't close to your parents, and then what do you do there? And that's a tough one, uh, my first thought is that if there's possibility of finding some kind of therapy for yourself, because
You can't change other people.
yeah,
You can only affect yourself and how you handle things, how you handle the situation. So maybe you've had kind of a tenuous relationship with your parents, and now you're in a position where you're having to help them out, or you see that they need help, and wanting them to change how they're doing things. It's more important to get the support you need. And yes, the therapy can be so important, and getting that for any person who's in a caregiving role, to be able to have someone they can lean on. And maybe, your parent is not willing to talk to an actual therapist, but maybe they're leaning on you to be that support. So maybe you need a therapist if you're taking on all these things from other people and being the support for so many people. So giving you a lot of things to think about today.
maybe Grover should say goodbye. We had that. Do you want to read it, Grover? Oh, sure, I'd be happy to. Okay, great. So let's see. Let's see. Oh, it's hard to read. I mean, do you have my glasses anywhere? I don't know. Oh well, I'll try. Let's see. That's our podcast for today. We hope you enjoyed it. We would love to hear from you. Make sure to leave us a comment. What, I want to be over there. I can come in sideways. I know. If you like what you heard today, you can learn more about our Fair Parenting Coaching Program and join them on their next workshop. Find out our blogs, our podcast, sign up for Tuesday tips with parents on our website at focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's focused with an ED. Yeah, ED. Yep. So you can also find them on, you're on Facebook. That's really cool. That's a Facebook at Focused Healthy Family. And then also, you're on Instagram? Are you serious? Oh, don't go. That's good. It's Gina's that's on it. So find Instagram at Gina.FocusedHealthyFamily. Yep. And of course, remember, how you speak to your children today shapes their future and yours. I tried to point. There you go.
Thank you, Grover.
Bye-bye.